1 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 9, the Apostle Paul declares, "For a great and effective door has opened to me, and there are many adversaries." 2026 stands before you as a great door of opportunity. But do not be deceived. That door is guarded by adversaries that do not want you to pass. These are not enemies of flesh and bone, but the giants of the spirit, fear, guilt, shame, and condemnation. They are the strongholds designed to bind you to your past so you can never walk into your purpose. The only way you will overcome them is to prepare in the waiting. The sun sinks behind the jagged peaks of the wilderness. The shadows grow long, reaching like fingers across the valley floor. Most watch the horizon and fear the coming of the night. They see the moon rise and think they are safe because the gates are barred and the lamps are lit. But you are not like most. You know that the greatest threat to the territory the king has entrusted to you does not arrive with the blare of trumpets or the visible march of an empire. The enemy you must train for as the year of our Lord, 2026 dawns, is the enemy you cannot see. He does not wear a surcoat of red or carry a banner of iron. He is the mist that seeps through the cracks in the stone. He is the whisper in the corridor that tells you the walls are thin and the king has forgotten your service. He doesn't need to destroy you. He only needs to distract you long enough to make you drift into the deep woods where the wolves wait. While the world busies itself with resolutions, those fragile, hollow oaths made in the warmth of the feast, the warrior prepares for a siege. Resolutions are for the comfortable. Preparation is for the survivor. You are stepping into a year of invisible warfare. Doubt will crouch like a predator in the tall grass of your mind, watching your every footstep. Anxiety will circle your camp like a prowling lion, waiting for the fire to burn low. If you wait until the blade is at your throat to learn how to draw your sword, you have already lost the territory. The training begins now, in the silence and the cold, before the first arrow is ever loosed. We do not prepare because we are afraid. We sharpen the iron because the king has commanded us to hold the line for his kingdom. But let us be clear. This training is not a way to earn the king's favor. You do not sweat in the yard to prove your worth. You are already his. Discipline is not the source of your victory. Christ is the source. Training is simply the act of aligning your soul with the victory he has already won on the hill of skulls. It is the hollow vessel. His spirit is the wine that fills it. It is the hearth. His presence is the fire that warms the hall. To stand in the year 2026, you must move beyond vague intentions and soft wishes. You need a framework for the invisible fight that is coming to the door of your home, your mind, and your calling. First, guard the gate. Your eyes and ears are the portals to the territory God gave you, and they are under constant scouting. If you allow the enemy's spies, lust, comparison, and secular noise to enter freely, the inner keep is already compromised. Think of it this way. What you let in at midnight determines your strength at midday. If you fill your eyes with the enemy's propaganda while the moon is high, don't be surprised when your heart loses its courage when the sun is hot. A gate left open for a small distraction is an invitation for a total invasion. Vigilance is the price of peace in the year to come. You must recognize the 3 scouts the enemy sends before the main assault begins. First, beware of the spy of comparison. He does not come with a sword. He comes with a whisper in the barracks. He watches your brother's armor and tells you yours is dull. He makes you look at another man's kingdom and despise the territory God has entrusted to you. If the spy can make you covet your neighbor's blade, you will forget to pick up your own. Second, watch for the rust of complacency. Rust is the enemy that works in the silence of the armory while the warrior is resting. It does not break the steel with a blow. It eats it from the inside out while you sleep in a bed of silk. When you think the waiting period is a vacation rather than a preparation, the orange rot of drift begins to settle on your soul. A rusted heart will snap at the first clash of steel in 2026. Third, do not be blinded by the smoke of confusion. The enemy lights fires at the edge of your camp to fill the air with black soot. He chokes your lungs with information overload and blinds your eyes with the noise of 1,000 opinions. He wants you to strike at shadows instead of the true foe. But the warrior who has trained in the word has an internal compass that the smoke cannot touch. Do you see them now? The spy, the rust, and the smoke. They are the precursors to the siege. Root them out. Cut the compromise off at the door before it opens the gate to the darkness. Second, hold the line. This is the grit of daily obedience, the monotonous work of the soldier on the wall. It is doing what the king commanded when you feel the fire and when you feel nothing at all but the biting wind. Holding the line means you don't abandon your post because the weather turned cold or the task became boring. Consistency is the mortar that holds the stones of your life together. Without it, the wall is just a pile of rubble. Obedience is the muscle of the soul. It is built through the repetition of small, difficult choices made when no one is watching but the Father. Third, sharpen the sword. The Word of God is your only offensive weapon in the kingdom. A dull blade cannot cut through the thickest fog of doubt that the year 2026 will bring. This sharpening is not a chore for the weak. It is a necessity for the survival of the strong. A warrior who forgets to sharpen their blade is a warrior who is planning to surrender. Every verse memorized is a notch of strength in your steel. Every truth internalized is a sharper edge for the day of conflict. This is what training looks like tomorrow morning. It is the knee hitting the floor before the sun hits the sky. It is the refusal to let the world's noise be the first thing you hear when you wake. It is the discipline to seek the king's orders before you listen to the world's complaints. Look back across the chronicles of the great king to see those who stood before you. No hero was ever forged in the soft light of a summer day or the ease of the palace court. Consider the shepherd boy, David. Long before he stood in the valley of Elah, he was training for the enemy he could not see in the lonely hills. In 1 Samuel, chapter 17, verse 34, he speaks of the lion and the bear. He was alone in the wilderness, with no crowds to cheer his progress and no bards to sing his name. The wilderness was not a detour, it was the primary classroom for his kingship. The lion was not a tragedy to be avoided, it was a test to be conquered. David did not become a warrior when he saw Goliath. He revealed the warrior he had already become in the secret places. Every stone he threw in the creek bed was a prayer of total dependence. He had learned to trust the unseen hand while guarding the sheep, so he could trust the unseen hand while facing the giant. Consider the daughter of Zion, Queen Esther. Her enemy was an invisible decree of genocide signed in the dark by a man with a serpent's heart. She didn't fight Haman with an iron blade or a secret ambush. She fought him with a broken spirit before a holy God. Her training was not found in the weight of armor, but in the crushing weight of the fast. For 3 days, she and her maidens battled the enemy of fear in the secret place of the palace. They built a wall of prayer that the enemy's schemes could not scale. She walked into the king's presence only after she had knelt in the king's presence. Do you see the pattern? Different battles across different ages, but the same invisible enemy and the same training of the spirit. Consider Elijah, the man of the desert. He stood against the 400 prophets of Baal and watched the fire fall from the heavens. Yet, In 1 Kings, chapter 19, he fled into the wilderness because of a whisper from a mortal woman. His enemy was the invisible weight of exhaustion and the lie that he was alone in the fight. The king did not abandon him to his darkness. He sent an angel with bread and water, teaching him that the king's voice is often found in the still, small whisper after the storm. Think of Daniel in the heart of Babylon. His enemy was the silence of a God who seemed to allow the holy to be taken captive by the profane. Daniel's training was his ironclad discipline of the knee. 3 times a day he knelt toward the holy city, even with the shadow of the sword hanging over his neck. He had built a sanctuary in his spirit that no stone could seal and no decree could touch. He looked at the lions and saw only creatures under the hand of his master. Different warriors, same invisible siege. The weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but they are mighty through God for the pulling down of strongholds. And Nehemiah, the cupbearer who became the builder. In Nehemiah chapter 4, verse 17, they labored with one hand on the work and the other holding a weapon. They rebuilt the kingdom while the invisible threat of mockery and betrayal swirled around them like a toxic wind. They watched while others slept, because the enemy's greatest weapon is the hope that you will stop caring. They did not wait for the attack to be ready. They were ready, so the attack could not prevail. Enter now into the dark heat of the forge. Do you hear the rhythmic ring of the hammer against the iron anvil? To prepare for the year ahead is to submit yourself fully to the blacksmith's hand. A blade that has never felt the fire is brittle and will shatter at the first clash of steel. In Malachi chapter 3, verse 3, it says, "He will sit as a refiner and a purifier of silver." The king does not leave you as raw iron found in the mud of the yard. He thrusts you into the white-hot coals of trial, because he loves the edge of the blade too much to let it stay dull. The heat is not meant to destroy you. It is meant to melt away the dross of your past. Think of the dross as the things you've leaned on that aren't God: your cleverness, your strength, your reputation. The fire burns those away until only the pure, God-given steel remains. The hammer is the heavy discipline of the living word falling upon your soul, stroke after stroke. It falls again and again, reshaping your character until you reflect the image of the Maker. But remember, the iron does not hammer itself. The weapon does not choose its own shape or its own destiny. If you try to forge your own soul, you will only create a tool that snaps in the cold. Your discipline is not the fire. The Spirit of God is the fire. Your training is not the hammer. The truth of Christ is the hammer. You are simply the iron yielding to the hand of the one who knows the battle ahead. Consider the process of the fold. The smith beats the iron, folds it over, and beats it again, thousands of times. Each fold adds strength that cannot be seen by the eye. Each repetition of prayer, each day of showing up when you're tired, is another layer of spiritual steel. Then comes the quenching, the sudden plunge from the heat into the freezing water. This is the shock of the trial you did not see coming, the loss you did not expect. The water screams as it meets the metal, but this shock is what sets the steel for the fight. Without the quenching, the blade is just soft metal. With it, it is a weapon. Zechariah chapter 13 verse 9 declares, "I will test them as gold is tested." You are being prepared for a weight of glory that an unrefined soul could never carry. The marks on your spirit are not signs of weakness. They are your testimony written in blood and iron. They prove you have been in the fire and have not been consumed because another was in the fire with you. In Job chapter 23, verse 10, the cry of the warrior is heard. "When he has tested me, I shall come forth as gold. Do not pray for a lighter load. Pray for a stronger back. Do not pray for a cooler forge. Pray for a more enduring spirit. The enemy you cannot see is terrified of the one who has been through the forge and came out singing. He cannot break what the king has already tempered. The year 2026 is not a simple calendar. It is a territory to be held. Upon this territory, the invisible siege engines are already moving in the darkness. You call it anxiety. I call it a siege of the mind intended to starve your peace. It seeks to cut off your supply of truth until you surrender the keys to your gates. You call it shame. I call it an arrow dipped in poison that rots the wound from within. It makes you feel unworthy to lift your shield or stand among the ranks of the chosen. You call it fatigue. I call it the winter of the soul, where the enemy waits for you to lay down your sword and sleep in the snow. He doesn't need to kill you. He only needs you to stop caring about the kingdom. How do you train for these invisible foes who strike without a sound in the middle of the night? You man the watchtower of your heart every single hour of the day. Lust is a spy that you have allowed to enter through a side door in the shadows. Root it out and cut the compromise off at the door before it opens the gate to darkness. There is no comfort-based balance on a battlefield. There is only vigilance, obedience, and the grace that holds you when you are too weak to stand. When you wake in the morning, you are putting on the whole armor of God, not for a parade, but for the survival of your soul. Your belt of truth must be cinched tight, or you will trip in the thick mud of the valley. The darts of the enemy find the cracks in the armor when you stop walking in righteousness. So you must tighten the breastplate, for it is his righteousness that covers your heart. The enemy wants your focus, your stillness, and your hope. Deny him every inch of ground and bolster the gates with the iron of your resolve. A warrior who is ready for the invisible is a warrior who cannot be surprised by the visible. They are the ones who walk in the light even when the world is draped in the deep shadow of the valley. Look to the captain of our salvation. See him in the Garden of Gethsemane under the crushing pressure of the night. The invisible enemy was there, pressing down with the weight of every sin ever committed by man. The agony was so great that his sweat became like drops of blood falling to the cold earth. He was under a siege that would have crushed any soul of mere flesh and bone. Yet he did not retreat or call for the legions to save him from the cup. He walked toward the cross because he had already won the battle in the silence of the garden. In Hebrews chapter 12, verse 2, we are told to look to Jesus. He is the author and the finisher of our faith, the one who leads us through the fire. He is the Lion of the tribe of Judah, and his roar shakes the foundations of hell itself. He is the warrior king who went into the grave and tore the doors off their hinges with his own hands. He did not just survive the darkness, he conquered it forever. And because he lives, the fire you face today is not your end. It is your divine preparation. He is with you in the forge, directing the intensity of the heat for your good. When you feel the invisible enemy closing in, remember that you serve a king who sees in the dark. The victory is not something you are trying to achieve through your own meager strength. It is something you are fighting from, because the tomb in the garden is already empty. The resurrection is the guarantee that every siege has an end and every wall can be rebuilt. Every warrior who stands with Christ will share in the spoils of his eternal triumph. Lift your head, for your king has already mapped the path through the new territory of 2026. I am a soldier of the Most High. My strength is not in my hands, but in the Lord of hosts who goes before me. I will not be shaken by the unseen or broken by the fire of the trial. I will train while the world sleeps, and I will watch while the world drifts. The year ahead is not a threat to my peace. It is my divine assignment. I will hold my ground, protect my kingdom, and honor my King. 2026 will find me ready and standing on the rock. For the King and for the kingdom until the final horn sounds. I am ready. If this word has sharpened your spirit, do not leave the line of battle. Like this declaration and share it with a brother or sister who is struggling under the weight of the siege. Subscribe to join the ranks of those who refuse to stay silent as the year turns. Leave a comment below. I am ready for the forge. Help us strengthen the front lines of the faith. Roar of Zion, where faith meets fire and warriors are born.